You just got notice that you have a job interview coming up. That's amazing. So let's get you from a 25% chance success rate of landing the position to as close to 100 as we possibly can. So let's go and let me show you what to do. Hey guys, Andre here. For the past 3 years, I spent time working at a Fortune 500 recruiting agency that specialized in accounting and finance roles. My role was to basically recruit and interview candidates, and I've sat in over hundreds of client and candidate interviews, and myself, I've interviewed over 1,000 people. So within that process, I've learned a couple of tips and tricks that do work for candidates during interviews, and I've learned things that do not work in interviews. So in this video, I've put together a couple of steps that do work and information that you can use in your interview going forward, so you'll have the best chance whenever you arrive of landing the position that you've dreamt of. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. I have a couple of tips and tricks for you, so let's go. The first step of the interview that I would recommend doing is the most easiest, and that would be doing research on the company and figuring out what the company does, what industry they're in, and how they operate. This is probably the easiest step, and I've seen a couple of people miss it. There was one girl that I worked with in the past. I would set her up for interviews, but she did not research what the company did. So when she did go to her interview, she'd waste a lot of time asking questions about what the company did, and to the interviewer, it looked like she was unprepared. The number two thing to research would be the job description, and that's the easiest one. So I know that most people, they skip over the job description. They might just skim through it really quickly as they're applying for other positions. I totally get it, but now would be really the time to go through it line by line and figure out what the position is going to require of you, because it's going to come in handy when you're comparing and relating your experience to that job description of the work you have done previously. Now comes the second part, and slightly harder than part number one, and that would be knowing how to dress for your interview. So after having done your research on the company, figuring out what they do, you should have a general idea of whether or not it's going to be a blue collar type company or a white collar. So depending on the company, you're going to dress accordingly for the interview. I really would recommend most people just wear a suit and tie for most interviews, regardless of whether it's a blue or white collar interview. However, if you're going to interview at a factory or a meat processing plant, then you might want to wear a suit, but probably not wear a tie. Just kind of really make sure that you're looking professional and you show them that you really want the position. Now, if you're going to a white collar interview, like at a bank or an insurance company somewhere else where it's going to be more of a professional setting, then I would really recommend just wearing a suit and tie regardless. For women, it's going to be a little bit different, so I'll let the women decide what to wear. But in terms of color schemes, I've generally seen either blue or black dresses, formal dresses for women work a little bit better than anything that's colorful. And this is not to say it's a hard and fast rule, because obviously some people might be going to marketing interviews or creative type interviews. So those types of jobs might be slightly different in terms of dress. However, I'm speaking from experience working within accounting and finance, so I would just recommend suit and tie or something that's more professional to go in and talk to the interviewer. The third thing that's going to be important for interviews is only going to count for virtual interviews. And in order to prepare for a virtual interview, there are going to be three things. The first one is going to be the setting of the interview. So make sure that you're in an office space or somewhere that's going to be more professional with the background that's cleared. And please don't be in a bathroom trying to interview or in a hospital bed. I've seen that happen before too, and it was a complete disaster whenever the interviewer was asking if that candidate was ready to be ready and working the next day. The other thing is going to be camera distance. Make sure that the camera isn't too close to your eyes, or else it's going to be awkward. That also was not going to be a good look when you're presenting yourself virtually to the interviewer. And the last thing is just make sure that your background is clear and free from clutter. I worked with a hoarder one time. So whenever he got onto the interview, there was a bunch of stuff in the background. There were safes, papers, there were guns, all kinds of weird stuff, toasters. So I would say clear out your background if possible. And if not, just use a virtual filter to clear the background. So usually you can pick something over Zoom or on Teams that will block out the background for you. The fourth thing to being prepared for an interview is showing up on time. So make sure that you arrive at your interview at least 10 minutes early. This includes virtual interviews as well as being on site. So if you get there 10 minutes early, that'll give you enough time to walk through the parking lot into the office and make sure that you're at the location where you need to be. Now, if you're living in a busy city, I would recommend really figuring out what the traffic flow is going to be. I'd say that around 9 a.m., 12, and 4 or 5 p.m. are going to be the busiest rush hour times. So if you're living in a busier city that does have traffic, make sure to leave a little bit earlier to get to the location of the interview so you have enough time to get there. There really is nothing worse than a recruiter and a client sitting there and waiting for you while you're trying to either show up to the interview in person or if you're running late to Zoom or a virtual call. And if it is going to be a virtual call as well, just make sure that the program is installed on your computer too. So make sure that your Teams is working or that your Zoom is working already and that you can log on about 10 minutes early. So if that does happen and those programs are not installed, you're about 10 minutes early, that'll give you some time as well to make sure that those programs are installed. So then once everyone arrives to the interview, then you're going to be there as well. And you're going to be there showing that you have a good impression, you can show up on time, and that you're ready to go and work with the company. And now for the fun part. So you're at the interview on time. You showed up a little earlier. You look nice. You feel great. Things are going to be awesome, and you're perfectly prepared. You've done your research. So now you're actually in the room with the interviewer. The start of the interview is going to fall in two categories. The first one being the interviewer starts off and gives you more description about the company, what they do, what the role is going to be like. Some interviewers are going to be really excited, especially when it's a smaller company. With smaller companies, usually you're going to be interviewing with the owner, and the owner is going to be trying to sell you their company left and right. They're going to be so excited because it's probably the best thing for them, and they just love the thing that they do. So they might even take you around, show you things that you need to see, show you the office, etc. What I would recommend doing in this situation is just really absorb everything and then try to relate your experience as best as possible to what the position is going to be like. And remember that job description that we talked about earlier, the one that you might not have read? Well, at this point, this is going to become really handy because you're going to know how your experience from the past positions you worked in will relate to the position that you're currently being interviewed for. Now, the second part is going to be starting off asking you the questions first. Now, the job description is going to come in handy here too, because if the interviewer is asking questions, they're going to be trying to look for ways that your experience is relatable to their current position. So in this case, you won't have too much information to go off of what the company does look like from the interviewer's perspective. But having done that research on the company yourself and read the job description, you should be able to relate your past experience to the current experience of what the interviewer is looking for. So if you're falling into this format, you talk about your experience first, make sure that's relatable to the position, and then let the interviewer ask you questions. So I got a couple of pro tips for you. Pro tip number one is use the job description to relate your experience to, because whenever you get the job description, it's basically a cheat sheet for the job position. So beforehand, you probably want to prepare how you've done those types of job functions before to the job description, which is going to be super relevant and it's going to impress the interviewer whenever you're speaking with them. Pro tip number two is going to be repeating back to the interviewer the challenges or problems that they're facing, and then adding your narration and your experience of how you might have solved similar problems in the past. There was a CFO lady that I worked with, and this was her strategy. She would listen to the challenges and problems that the interviewer and company was facing. She would then repeat back what the interviewer said, and she would add in her experience and relate how she might have solved similar problems in the past. So this did two things for her. The first thing was that she showed her understanding of what the problem was. And then the second thing is that she showed she would be able to solve those problems and challenges for the company as soon as she came into the position. So having done that warranted her a 75% chance of landing the position, basically meaning 3 out of 4 interviews that she went on, she got job offer for 3 of those interviews. So other than that, in the conversation piece, I would just recommend trying to be authentic. Don't overthink it. Relax a little bit. It's not the end of the world. Everyone gets a little bit nervous whenever they go in, so that's completely natural. Yes, awesome job. You did it. The interview's over. You completed it. You walked out of the building all in one piece. Now, if you're working with a recruiter, I would recommend giving your recruiter a call, letting them know how the interview went, if you're interested in the position, what you like, what you don't like about it, and let them know if you would accept if an offer came through. That would really help your recruiter figure out if they should be continuing to push forward on the position and the client and give you feedback after the interview. If you're not working with a recruiter, I would just recommend writing a thank you letter to the interviewer if you have their email, and then sending it over to them, and then follow up within a couple of days. All right, here comes the end game. I mean, the follow-up game. Basically, what the follow-up game is 3 to 4 days after you interview, I would recommend following up with either your recruiter or the company. Write them an email, give them a call, and see what the status is of the position, just so you have a better understanding of what their thought process is, what's going on, if they decide to move in a different direction, or just get some general information about what they're thinking, or if they're interviewing other candidates. Now, to tell you they're interviewing other candidates, that could mean one of two things. Either one, they're too shy to tell you that you didn't get the position, or two, they're actually busy still interviewing other people and they're going to be making their decision fairly quickly. Expect to be ghosted also. I know this is not ideal, but it happens quite frequently. So don't be too upset if you don't hear back after an interview. People get busy, they don't have time to reply to you. And then there are also other people who don't have that much self esteem and they don't want to write you back telling you the bad news. So don't give up, keep trying. And if you get an offer, then negotiate the offer and then go from there. All right, guys, that's it. So hopefully you learned something. You can implement some of these steps. I just took you through the whole interview process, starting from the research, how to dress, virtual interviews, and the conversation. So hopefully that's helpful. I would really love to hear how your interviews went down in the comments below. Share your experiences with me. If you need any help, also leave that in the comments down below. More than happy to speak with you, maybe even give you a few pointers as well. But anyways, I look forward to working with you and seeing you in the next one, and it's been a pleasure. Alrighty, take care. Bye.